Unfortunately, I have experience with bears, bad experiences with bears, but this is not one of those stories. This is a good bear experience. So from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been in Nashville for years. Singer, songwriter, producer, mixing engineer. And a friend of mine, Kevin Grant, really, really good friend of mine, called me one day, years ago, and said, "Hey man, I gotta record bass on this record. It's over in Charlotte. Why don't you ride with me?" I thought, man, Charlotte? It's in Charlotte. I said, all right, man, I'll go with you. Canceled my writing appointments. Rode with him to Charlotte. Late in that evening, the next day we got up, we come to the studio, and we're here at Gat3, and I went, whoa, man, had no idea that anything of this caliber existed outside of major cities like New York, major music mecca cities, New York, Nashville, Atlanta, LA. I fell in love with everybody, man, the facility, just the way things ran. Nashville, for lack of a better term, it's become a bit of a factory. It's streamlined, would be the best way to say it. Everything happens in a certain way, in a certain amount of time, every time. And I came here and I forgot that, this is how studios used to run. And so I fell in love. I went, man, I got to do more stuff here. So shortly after that, a guy from South Carolina was visiting Nashville, and he caught one of my shows there in Nashville. Afterwards, he said, I got some neighbors. They got a band, they want to record some stuff, but they're coming to Nashville in a couple of months. Do you mind if I exchange information? We'll give them your number and all that. I said, no, man, that'd be great. Tell them to give me a call. So sure enough, a couple of months later, they've come to Nashville. I meet them. Great folks. They said, well, we've been thinking about recording some stuff. We want to do that in Nashville. And I said, well, how far are you from Charlotte? I said, 45 minutes. So I got one better for you. There's a great facility basically in your backyard. It's in Charlotte. I'll come over there. I'll take you to the studio. You can check it out. If you want to record there, we should do that. So we get a bunch of local musicians together, session guys that play here often. They played on the session. It went great. Fast forward, I start bringing Nashville session guys to Charlotte. I had like half Nashville session guys, half Carolina boys session guys. Fast forward, I start writing with artists here and other songwriters. Fast forward, I start producing some artists out of here. And I got deeper and deeper with what I was doing at Gat3. I spending more time, and everybody just became family. I was mixing a project here one day, and I think it was some tracks that I'd brought in from, maybe we'd cut in Nashville, but I was mixing it here. And I was having issues with the hi-hat, and had a lot of bleed in the other drums, which is typical. And Glenn comes in, and I said, man, this hi-hat, these tracks are kind of bare bones. There's not a ton of instrumentation on them already. And so the hi-hat, when it's in the mix, it feels like it's all hi-hat. And when I take it out, then it's, the rest of the tracks just kind of lose whatever they were doing. I don't know what to do here. And he said, oh, that's easy, man. You make it a grizzly bear. I said, you do what? And he said, you make it a grizzly bear. And that stuck with me. I got what he was saying. And it's odd how, that as an engineer, as a mixing engineer, that makes sense. But I didn't realize that would flow over into other things, like who I am as a songwriter, as an artist, as a producer, and even on a personal level. I've figured out that anytime that I get stuck, and I'm stuck with something that is not really making me very happy, I just turn it into a grizzly bear. Just make it a grizzly bear, man. I think that's the secret to to making great music and also having a pretty good life too. It gets in your way, just make it a grizzly bear. I had an assistant here once. He was in and out of the room quite a bit, and his desk chair always sat really high, and that's kind of how I sat in the desk chair as well. But so I thought, man, I'm gonna mess with this guy. He hadn't been here that long at the time, I don't think, and so he stepped out of the room, and I ran around the gear rack. I sat down at the chair and I pulled the lever, and the chair went all the way down as low as it would go. I jumped back up and ran back around the gear rack. He comes back in a couple of minutes later, and he goes to sit down, and it was like 8 inches lower than what it was when he left. He's like, what's going on here? And he grabs the lever, chair raises back up. A few minutes later, he needs to go check a line or something out in the live room. He gets up and he goes out. I sneak around the gear rack again and lowered his chair all the way down. And I must have done this about half a dozen times. And I said, man, it's probably just, those are like air hydraulics or something. And the chair's been around for a minute. The chair's probably just going bad. So I went into Madelenn's office and I said, hey, do you have any Vaseline or anything? She's like, no, Vaseline? What? I don't want Vaseline. So I got coconut oil. I said, yeah, give me coconut oil. So I grabbed the coconut oil and I go back. I go back in the studio. I get in there and I took the coconut oil and I greased all of the handles and all the levers on the chair. And so by now he has gotten used to coming back into the room and having to raise the chair. So I lower it one last time, I grease up everything. He comes back in the room and he sits down and the chair is basically on the floor again. And he said, man, this chair, he gets pretty upset about it. He grabs the lever and his hand slips right off, and now he's covered in coconut oil. It was one of my favorite shenanigans that I've pulled here. The assistants never see it coming. I really feel like I know actually that I've gotten more from this place than I can ever get back. After coming here for years, it's always great to get out of Nashville and get away from the machine for a minute. I'm usually here a week at a time or so, and it's really refreshing to be here and to just operate differently than what I normally do. I've been through so much stuff. It seems like anytime anything major in my life happens, it happens around a time that I'm scheduled to be here. Man, I've lost dogs and relationships, and had a car stolen, lost publishing deals, things like that. And for whatever reason, if it's a God thing, I don't know, but for whatever reason, when it seems like I'm having a harder part of my life, I'm really going through the ringer on something, I end up here, and it always feels like home. The things that I've taken from here, I'll carry with me the rest of my life in all of my ventures, whether it's a songwriter or mixing or as an artist. There's so much that I've learned just by being in this environment with people that genuinely love the art of creating music. I feel like I'm so much more musical now than I would have ever been had I not started coming to Charlotte and hanging out at Gat3.